This meeting is now being recorded.
Okay, so we are now recording. A couple of things before we get started. One, it's *6 to mute and unmute yourself. Please don't put us on hold. Please just mute us because oftentimes you do have background music that plays. And then second, we will be sharing our screen a lot during this webinar, which means that the chat feature it's not really helpful because sometimes we're looking at some other part of our screen, so we're not seeing what you're typing in. So please do holler out any sort of questions or feedback or comments you have as we are going through the users group today. Just feel free to chime in at any time, but probably don't use the chat feature as much because we won't be regularly monitoring it. So I'm Kristen Lara. I work in the Health Informatics Unit at the Health Department. And the first thing I wanted to do was to introduce the new data manager for the Women's Wellness Connection, Q, who's in the room with us. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself really quickly.
Hi, everyone. I'm Q Vu, and WWC actually put out a nice little blurb last week introducing me on eConnect. I am happy to be joining the team. I've been at the Health Department for a little over 10 years and started in the Cancer Registry and then moved around a little bit within the department. And again, I'm just really happy to join all of you.
No, we're really happy, beyond happy, that she's on the team. She's been with us for a few weeks now. We just kept her well hidden so that she could kind of learn the ropes. So you can kind of start emailing her if you have billing questions. Otherwise, you know, Nick continues to be your go-to guy for technical assistance, but you'll probably hear from Q more and more as she learns more and more about eCaST. Do the others that are in the room want to?
Yeah. Hi, this is Chris McCracken, Program Coordinator.
And this is Angie Fellers-Lemire, Nurse Consultant.
And is Ivy returning to us? Ivy was here.
Ivy was here. I don't know.
So she may be back. She may not.
And
you
Nick,
hear her voice later.
And Nick sends his hellos. He's out sick today.
Yeah. He's got a bad cold, and he had a root canal today.
Oh, me.
He's been sick since this weekend and had a root canal that was previously scheduled that he went through with, I think. I'm not sure. So, so today we will be talking about user access renewal, which is a normal contract startup activity. We'll be showing you the new short-term follow-up data entry pass if you haven't already noticed that over the past month, which is really smooth and slick and awesome, as well as some other kind of nice features to kind of streamline data entry. And then we'll be talking for the bulk of today about what the final diagnosis section means and really what's the significance of that final diagnosis date and how to make sure you're assessing that final diagnosis date correctly and entering it correctly into eCaST. And then we will end by talking a little bit about how we're moving from a live training format to an online self-paced training format and series of online videos. So we'll talk about that as well at the end of the webinar. So can everybody see my screen and hear my voice?
Yes.
Somebody confirm?
Yep.
Awesome.
We have some yeses.
Okay, so I'm now going to turn it over to Q, who's going to go through the user renewal process for this year.
Hi, everyone. Again, I guess this is my first initiation into eCaST. So at the start of the contract year, we will be going through the system and setting all your user access so that you can, if you go in, you will be prompted to sign your confidentiality agreement again. Excuse me. And I'll just go ahead and on the screen show you what is going to happen. So when you go to sign into eCaST after June 30th, and here's my test example. you go to sign in.
Oh, it doesn't usually do that.
Sorry, this mouse is very hard to control. And you go into your eCaST. And actually, this is for access to multiple applications, so you will also get a prompt for your other applications as well if you have permission for other applications other than eCaST. So you will, when you go into sign in and you put in your username and password and click on eCaST or application, you should get this confidentiality agreement pop up. So you just go ahead and you click to proceed and agree, and you should be set for the new fiscal year. And if you this is for us to kind of clean out our system, and no worries. If someone's on maternity leave or you have a user that can't go in and renew, just don't worry about it. Just request access again, and we can quickly get you set up. So come June 30th, or after June 30th, when you go into log into your eCaST account, you will be prompted to renew your confidentiality agreement. And does anyone have any questions, concerns?
So if they're away on maternity leave, how long will that pop-up be there? Forever? So let's say it's 3 months down the line.
So what will happen after July 31st or so, if you haven't logged in and agreed or accepted that, so you've been inactive for the month that we did the renewal, we will go in and look for all of those users that haven't signed, and we will remove their access from the system. So if, for example, you have someone who, is due June 13th and will be on maternity leave, through the month of July, more than likely when that person gets back. Chris noticed that I used my daughter's birth date because I was on maternity leave the entire month of July, so I would have been included here. You'll get back and you'll try to log in, and you will no longer exist in eCaST. You just click to submit a new user request like you did the first time, and you'll be given your same username back and all that kind of good stuff, just to say that you really do still want access. It's just our way of automatically, without having to have all the eCaST coordinators run around and get everybody's signature and tell us who's off and us to delete them out one by one. This is a way of automating that renewal process. So usually we have maybe 2 people who happen to be on maternity leave and miss kind of the boat. So it's no worries if that kind of happens to you. You'll just request access again.
And we'll give you a heads up in the coming weeks too that this will happen. But we just wanted to give you the first heads up here today and show you what's going to happen after June 30th when you go to log in.
Cool. Are there any other questions? I'm going to double check that I don't have any here, but thank you. So while I'm thinking about it, I'm just double checking that nobody put anything in the chat box. So another kind of normal eCaST related fiscal year crossover activity that you might have normally done around this time of the year with the eCaST user renewal is your subcontractor renewal. I just wanted to make a note so you guys weren't missing anything or expecting anything over the next month. What we're going to do at the end of July, and this will be something we'll talk about at the next eCaST users group, is we're going to actually give your eCaST coordinators access to manage your subcontractor locations from within eCaST. And so the next eCaST users group, part of it will be showing you how to use that feature and then asking you over the month of August to do that renewal. within the application. So again, we're not, passing massive quantities of paper back and forth. So I just wanted to mention that to you today, just to say, don't be expecting anything related to subcontractors. Do be signing renewed contracts or MOUs with those clinics, but you won't be hearing anything from us in the month of June related to subcontracts and eCaST. Cool. So let me put my head back on straight and see what I was supposed to talk about next here. Alrighty, so I did want to show you guys really quickly what short-term follow-up looks like in the new system. Hopefully you guys have noticed this already. I'm going to log in as myself instead of this Kristen person, because I'm not confident it'll work for that person, so they're probably have limited access. Okay. So short-term follow-up, we released this, I think, about a month or so ago. We have this fictitious client, let's say, named, she has a horrible name. Totally illogical name. I wasn't even in a good mood this morning when I made this, obviously. But she came in July had a CBE with a diagnostic mammogram and ultrasound. I'm going to just look at this case so that you're oriented to what's going on with her. So we're opening the case up, I think I clicked the button.
You did.
Did I?
It's spinning.
Is it?
Yeah, up in the tab.
Okay, train is really slow. It's even slower than production, believe it or not. Because believe it or not, we do devote the majority of our resources to the live application. So I know it doesn't feel like that some days. So she had an abnormal CBE, a diagnostic mammogram, follow-up with further immediate. I'm just clicking on these accordion headings to open and close them. And then a diagnostic procedure, an ultrasound, and then 6 months short-term follow-up recommended. We don't see immediately at 6 months, but when we click the edit button, we see it down here. So more than likely at this point, this case might be read-only for you. It might not be. It probably should be. Remember, short-term follow-up will turn read-only after 2 weeks. That wasn't working, and then it started working somewhat recently, so you might be noticing that more and more lately, which should be driving you, instead of coming here and adding that short-term follow-up. Let's say this client needed a short-term follow-up diagnostic mammogram in 6 months. You shouldn't be coming back in here to add that, because remember, CDC is counting the clock from the start of this case, which is this abnormal CBE. And, good for you. You close this case within 4 days, definitely meeting the timeliness indicator. We don't want to go back in here and add a diagnostic mammogram 6 months later, because you're not going to meet that 2-month timeliness indicator. So instead, I only went into this to orient you to the client's case, but you typically don't need to go into that older case to see what's going on. So when we come in here, we're going to click Add a New Cycle. And let's say that she came in January for her short-term follow-up. We're doing some late data entry here, but I guess that's okay for test purposes. Instead of clicking Screening and Diagnostics, we're going to select short-term follow-up, and we are Boulder Valley, as we generally tend to be in test and train. This old enrollment, I noticed as a provider I didn't need to re-enroll her after her 6-month short-term follow-up, because this is an annual, it's good annually, so I didn't re-enroll her. I'm just going and adding a short-term follow-up based on this enrollment. It's going to be breast. Remember, short-term follow-up, even if you happen to have a routine screening for the other body part that coincides, you're going to have to add that on a different clinical cycle. So this is just a breast short-term follow-up case. She had a prior diagnosis that was marked on the earlier screening, so this pre-populated. One thing that's new, you'll notice you don't see the current mammogram reason anymore. That's because I know. If you add a mammogram, I know it's short-term follow-up. Don't add a mammogram, I know that a mammogram wasn't done. So that's the reason that disappeared. What I'm going to do today is add a diagnostic mammogram. This is slightly confusing, and it will get better and better, but we automatically fix it for you. So technically you could select diagnostic mammogram additional views, which is here. But remember, it probably is better to select mammogram, because down here you can put diagnostic. This is saying it's your first mammogram and it's diagnostic, as opposed to additional views. You don't really have to deliberately remember to do that because I fix that for you after the fact. But you know, if you want to, you know, just a little plug that that's what you should be selecting, I guess. We're going to go with this is BI-RADS 2, diagnostic. See, that's how we're indicating that it's a diagnostic mammogram. Click there, and we're going to click Add Procedure. So what's really cool about this, if you haven't seen it yet, hopefully you see that it looks a lot simpler than it used to. This accordion medical history, this is just what we had entered. It's just closed. We see this mammogram. If we added an ultrasound, if we added a biopsy, it would be listed here. The last thing that we need to do is add a final diagnosis, which you need to do for every single short-term follow-up case. I'm going to click Cancel just to show you what will happen if you forget. It'll do the caution flag, and it'll say, additional diagnostics required, case is clinically incomplete. This is another thing I wanted to make sure to touch on today in general. I've gotten several questions when you finish the procedures for a client and you say, well, it's complete. You know, what else do you need from me? I'm not sure where to go or what to do to tell you I'm done. If you're getting this error message and you've added all the procedures, you say, well, this is all she had. She's done. How do I tell you that? It means you need to add in the final diagnosis section, you need to officially tell us that she's finished. So that's what that is saying. It's not saying, you know, keep performing procedures for forever. It's saying tell us officially that she's finished, what her final diagnosis was. So we're going to say after that she's returned for routine screening, breast cancer not diagnosed. Now this final diagnosis date, and this is something that I want to go into great detail on, remember that the final diagnosis date is the day of the last procedure always. And it's the day of the procedure that yielded the final diagnosis. So in this case, it's the day of the diagnostic mammogram, 1/15/2014. If it, for example, took a couple of days to get her mammogram results back in, it is not the day that you got the results in. It's the day of the mammogram itself. One way to think about that is all your procedures all along are the day that they were performed, not the day you're hearing back. So this is staying consistent with that methodology that the CDC uses. In addition, and I'm going to take you through some of these cases later on, if you have procedures that happen for clients with a cancer case after the diagnosis, we do not want to see those in eCaST. They should not either be procedures that exist or they should not be incorporated into the final diagnosis date. So in this case, it's fairly simple. We're going to make sure that this 1/15 reflects this 1/15. I kind of use this as a kind of a cheat sheet sometimes because I can usually see my procedures in the background to make sure that those align. And I'm clicking Save. I'm going to click Save at the bottom here to make sure that this case is ready to go. Now I do have a caution flag, and so I'm clicking on it to make sure what's going on here. It does say screening ineligible, but it doesn't say anything else. There are no other messages it's telling me. Screening ineligible is another error that I get calls about fairly frequently. And just to shout out, continue entering short-term follow-up cases as clients return multiple times during the year. All cases that say screening ineligible, previous screening paid in the fiscal year, we'll use those, and if we have additional funds at the end of the year, they'll go to these cases. So if you would like potentially extra funding for them, go ahead and enter them in eCaST, and don't worry about the fact that on your home page they appear as errors.
Right.
So I'm going to...
Is it true, Christine, that if you have that error, and on your main homepage, you click administrative errors, that those errors will disappear from their error list?
So let's go ahead and do that right now. So this one particular case only has one error, right? It doesn't, before, a minute ago, it also said diagnostic case incomplete, blah, 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 and I said, you need to fill out your final diagnosis. This one now, that's the only error that appears for it. So it's actually more or less good to go. It's just that we can't pay for it right now. So I clicked, you can either click this home page or you can click the icon to navigate back to the home page. Yeah. So that's another kind of, I don't know if you call that a feature, but you know, Jeff Scott thing that he loves to do, our developer who's in love with this sort of stuff. So I'm scrolling down on the page and I'm gonna zoom in a little and see if this works. It doesn't work so well. Maybe. Okay. So there's this button here that Angie was talking about, hide administrative errors. So right now, if I start typing in, remember I can use this as a filter. So I'm starting to type in screening ineligible, and it's popping up all of these cases that are ineligible, including eggplant parmesan. Nick, for some reason, loves eggplant parmesan. That is his go-to name. We all have go-to names.
Now, huh?
There's also the Baggins family, Steve's go-to eCaST family name. I'm infinitely less creative.
I like the Testingtons, yeah.
Yeah, that is Brent. Okay, so if I click this hide administrative errors, it will reload my page. And now if I type that in, hold on, I'm just curious about something. So now do you see I have 27 errors instead of the 35 up here?
And Parmesan's gone.
So if I do, if I do this, it doesn't, nothing appears anymore. Those are gone from my list. So, you know, depending on your agency size, 35 might be around what you have. Maybe you have 4 and you want, you know what I mean, maybe you have 15. That's kind of one of those awkward numbers where it makes it so that you have 2 pages of stuff. If you do hide the administrative errors, all of those will disappear, and it might make you be able to confirm a little faster that you don't have additional data entry to do for the day.
Well, and then, you know, people like me who just want it all gone. You want to clear it up, and then that's one way to do it.
There are a lot of people out there that want that, so I wanted to make sure they knew about that option.
That's very good.
So, well, and, you know, I don't know when this will be coming, let's say, but one other idea that I have that I think is very doable also is to, so right now all those caution flags look the same, but maybe those should be like gray at least, so that when you're looking through, when you're eyeballing it, you can see that those are infinitely less important errors, something like that.
Could be.
So, yeah. Thank you for remembering that, Angie.
Yeah.
Are there any questions about short-term follow-up before? I'm going to move in really detailed after this to final diagnosis date stuff. No questions. Okay. So we kind of went through in general that final diagnosis date should be the last procedure date. It shouldn't be the day you got the PAC report. It shouldn't, you know, you shouldn't be including like a surge consult after that was specifically determined the client's course of treatment. So we're going to go through some examples in eCaST of final diagnoses dates that were entered in error, and hopefully that will help to clarify what to and not to do. This came up because when I was preparing for the last data submission to the CDC, I realized that in the old system we hadn't been checking this as closely as I thought or had hoped we were. And so it turns out over the course of the system's history, I mean, over 6,000 cases have been entered where the final diagnosis date doesn't match the last procedure date. So it's a pretty rampant issue in the system, and I think it's because final diagnosis date is a little confusing overall in terms of the way CDC defines it. And so I thought it felt like something that was worth talking about in detail today. You'll be seeing kind of some additional information about it in the eConnect, so you have something written down to refer to. If you're not sure as well, we're recording this, of course, for you to review later. And then we will probably incorporate cases over the last year or so where there is this inconsistency in the upcoming Datapalooza in September. So you'll probably be seeing that, and it'll be good to kind of learn and begin practicing this right now so that when that time comes and we give you a list of 15 cases where final diagnosis date doesn't match any of the procedure dates or the last procedure date, you kind of know what to look for. So we're going to go through it in depth today just so you know kind of what to look for and what to choose when you're in eCaST and you're trying to assess how to enter that final diagnosis date field. So I've got some test cases that I've created that we're going to go into to see kind of older data that wasn't entered quite right. So we see here in this summary screen, the client had a CBE, a mammogram, and an ultrasound in late April, and then she had a biopsy in May, and then 6 months later we see a diagnostic mammogram. That's a little strange looking, that gap, and the fact that there was a procedure after the biopsy is a little strange too. So when we jump in to review an older case, one thing you might notice is that all of these sections are closed, and what's open to you is the diagnostic section and then the final diagnosis section, because most likely after you have one diagnostic, this is really the focus of your care with the client, or your data entry is on completing the case and closing it. So what we see here is the final diagnosis date is May 10th. I'm highlighting that down at the bottom. And then up here we see that that does match 5/10, the biopsy date up here, and then we see a mammogram that's listed after it. Most likely, if we went and talked to this agency, and my guess is that that mammogram was the short-term follow-up recommended down here. So we see short-term follow-up was recommended on 5/10. So really what's happened here is that this mammogram is short-term follow-up and should have been entered separately. So this should be deleted. And what is happening, just so you know, when we submit this to the CDC, they're thinking that you needed to do a diagnostic mammogram to complete the final diagnosis. They don't actually see, this is kind of interesting, they don't actually see these 3 individual dates. They see each of these procedures, and they see this date. So what they think, because of the way this was submitted, is that a diagnostic mammogram and an ultrasound were performed that resulted probably in the biopsy. So that's how this is getting misconstrued by the CDC, and that's the importance of good data entry here, and the importance of splitting this out. So this is another reason why I'm also not massively going through the system and just resetting final diagnosis. If I did that, I would be changing this date from 5/10 to 12/28.
Yeah.
You'd be failing the indicator, and it would be wrong, right? I mean, this is so what should be, and I'm not going to do all of the data entry here. This is something we do really commonly in Datapalooza, is we would delete this procedure and then add it into a short-term follow-up clinical cycle all on its own. So right now, this case, I'm just going to scroll down again so you can see, this case looks right. So 5/10, the final diagnosis date, it does match the last procedure date. Do you have any questions about why we deleted that diagnostic mammogram? Okay. So I'm going to show you one more case that's very similar to that. I think it's another case where short-term follow-up was entered on the previous clinical cycle in error. Also, I don't know if you noticed this, but I went to search clients rather than the home page. That's really a personal preference thing. Sometimes I feel like this page loads a little faster, but that could just be me. So here again we see a CBE in July, a mammogram in August, and then 2 months later a repeat CBE in December. Oh, 4 months later, I can't count. In December we see a repeat CBE. So let's jump in here and see what's going on. Okay, and again, remember these things are closed, but stuff did happen up here. And what we're really interested in is this 12/2 date, but then 8/6. 8/6 is the final diagnosis. When I scroll up and open the screen procedures tab, 8/6 is the date of this mammogram. So really, this case should have been closed as follow-up right here as short-term follow-up. And that CBE should have gone on a totally new clinical cycle.
Well,
most likely, though, now that I'm looking here.
probably should have.
Yeah.
It would have been good to have.
So if it had been approved, so actually this is a good point for another reason. So this clinical breast exam has suspicious breast pain. The mammogram is BI-RADS2. We could click into it to see if it was diagnostic. Let's say it's a diagnostic mammogram, and Angie, the nurse consultant, reviews it and approves it as closed without an ultrasound. Maybe that happens. Maybe it doesn't. You would have to ask her for approval. If she approved it, it would have then been closed to short-term follow-up. If it wasn't approved and it just took 4 months to get her back in, then this would have been right to put this down here. Chris is right about that. It would have been right to put this down here. But we would want to make sure to update this and make this match this final diagnosis. So let's pretend like the CBE is in the right spot. This is another good reason that we don't blindly change your data. We ask you to review it and talk to us about it. So here I'm gonna go ahead and to fix this case, I'm gonna change the final diagnosis date to match the last procedure date. And so this is something that during Datapalooza in a few months you're gonna get cases like this where we're gonna ask you to review it, and you're gonna maybe say to this one, well, Angie reviewed it and Angie said that CBE had to be there. If that's the case, then the final diagnosis date needs to match that CBE date, and that does mean that now that we change this case is failing this indicator.
Yeah.
Does that one make sense? I take that as a yes. Okay.
For 2.
So let me see what okay. So the next one that I want to show you is where, so it was just the wrong procedure that was selected for the final diagnosis date. Sometimes the case needed to be split up. Sometimes you just needed to update the final diagnosis date to match the last procedure instead of the middle procedure. Now I'm navigating to a new client, clicking View here on Clinical Cycles. I think I'm going into the breast case that has procedures. Okay, so for this one, I see 1028. I have no idea why, honestly. I have no idea why this one is the way it is. I'm guessing the final diagnosis date is wrong because, and this we can see as power users, but you might not be able to see, I don't think, the initiated date. Chris and Ivy and Angie enter this information when you submit your BCCP enrollment paperwork. We actually put it into eCaST. So I can see it was initiated 11/5. That makes me think that this is probably correct. And that, in fact, this biopsy date should be the final diagnosis date. Again, this is the reason why I'm not massively going through the system and just setting the final diagnosis date to the last procedure date, because it felt like when I started reviewing them, there were a lot of different things going on with these cases. That wasn't a one-size-fits-all scenario. So let's say that you open the chart and you realize nothing happened on 10/28. That was like fat fingers colliding everywhere. I don't know. But let's say 11/04, and maybe there was another procedure that I don't really get that one at all. It was, it had a different client chart out or something like that, maybe. So let's say that that's how we fix that one. Again, I'm going up to client search at the top because I'm just looking at these individual client IDs that I've already pulled. So here, this must be a typo. We're going to look at a different client because this can't. I was trying to.
I can't have a final diagnosis.
No, and that's from 1993. 16539. We'll just go to a different one altogether because that's what I have written down. So I must have not written down all my numbers. All right, that's somewhat more recent. Okay. Oh, I probably should have gone into cervical. Cancel. So I accidentally clicked on breast, and now I'm going to go into cervical. So here we see a SIN1 colpo on 9/19, and we see a final diagnosis date on 9/26. This could be one of two things. Again, the reason I'm not massively rewriting these. Maybe there was a procedure after the colpo that's missing here. That's one thing that we want you to be checking for and making sure you're doing. So if you have Gen consults or surge consults that follow an invasive diagnostic procedure, and it was necessary to determine the final diagnosis. So that happens, I feel like, maybe a little bit more commonly with breast and cervical, where maybe you do have an excisional biopsy, and I don't know if you want to give an example, Angie, of when a surge consult is needed to determine the final diagnosis versus when it's just for treatment. Because so I did get clarification from the CDC. If you do need a surge consult to determine the final diagnosis, they want the surge consult in eCaST, and they want that to be the final diagnosis date. A lot of times, more often than not, the surgical consult is really more to determine after a diagnosis the course of treatment. In that case, we don't want to see it in eCaST, either as the final diagnosis date or as an individual procedure. So here, I don't know, like potentially, because this is a later date, let's say it's that it took 6 days, 7 days to get the result back. Remember that we do not want in eCaST the day that you determined she had cancer. We want the day the procedure was performed, so we want the 19th instead. So that this now matches this. I'm going to go back to the search. Does anybody have any questions? Do those make sense?
Yeah, please jump in.
Okay, for this one, I'm going to make you guys talk. I don't even know what it is, but I'm going to ask you what the day should be. I should have been doing this all along.
No kidding. We're all named Joan Smith.
They are. We wiped over all the PHI with Joan Smith. Don't ever search for Joan Smith. I tried to, when I wrote the code to do that, and I set it to Jeffrika Scott, which is the feminized version of our developer.
Scott, yeah.
He did not like that, and he redid it.
To Joan.
He said it to Joan Smith, which is really boring. Okay, so here we have an ultrasound on 8/28, a biopsy on 9/10, and then we have a final diagnosis date of 8/28. So what should we do here? What should the final diagnosis date be?
It should be the date of the biopsy.
So what date is that?
9/10.
9/10/13.
Good. And as a reminder, thank you so much, it's not the day the biopsy result came in, it's the day the procedure was performed. So we fixed that one.
Yay.
So lastly, I do have an example of when treatment information has been entered in error on the clinical cycle, because I've talked about that, but without showing you one. Okay, so here we see CVE, mammogram, and an ultrasound, a biopsy, and then a few days later a surgical consult. This one really requires the review of your clinician to determine the intention behind the surgical consult. Because sometimes it should be here and sometimes it shouldn't. But if you have a surgical consult that follows a cancer diagnosis, only enter it if it was needed to determine the diagnosis, if it aided in that determination. So if you're not sure if something is maybe atypical hyperplasia or something else, and you need the surge consult to figure that out. I'm making this up because I'm not clinical.
That's right, though.
Does it? Okay, yay, woohoo! I got Shauna's approval. Then you would enter it in here, and you would change this, okay? So if you need the surge consult to determine whether or not it is a cancer,
And that's
we're putting 9/11 here, okay? If it wasn't needed, we would delete this, okay? So let's pretend the opposite. Let's pretend like, no, we did enter this in error. It was actually to determine course of treatment, whether or not this client should get a mastectomy. We would delete that, and then here we would leave this as 9/6. So that's one other thing during Datapalooza. We will ask you to review is cases where maybe you see the surgical consult is the last procedure. We would want your clinician to review and determine the intention behind that surgical consult to know whether or not the procedure should be deleted out of eCaST altogether, or maybe the treatment date should be updated.
right.
And the way that you determine that is, what was the intention of the surgical consult? Had the final diagnosis been made before the surgical consult occurred or not? Are there any other questions about this? I know it feels maybe a little redundant, but
I have a question.
Yes.
This is Evie at St. Thomas More. So if we don't enter the post-operative appointment and the doctor charges for it, that patient's going to get billed for it.
Medicaid will cover it.
Because they'll be on BCC if they qualify for Medicaid. I had one that did not.
So that's a really good point and a good question. Once a final diagnosis has been made, hopefully the client can be enrolled onto BCCP Medicaid. If you have a client who doesn't qualify for Medicaid, really we're not allowed to pay for any procedures past the point of diagnosis. So if the intention of the surgical consult after a biopsy is to determine the course of treatment, whether or not a client is able to get onto Medicaid, WWC can no longer reimburse for those procedures.
Okay, thank you.
That was a very good question. Are there any other questions about final diagnosis or that cutoff between the final diagnosis and treatment?
Yep.
Awesome. So I did want to go through, we've got about 15 minutes left. I wanted to talk with you briefly about kind of where we're moving in terms of training, and then leave the floor open for questions in general about eCaST and eCaST data entry. So you probably have seen at some point an email talking about at least the billing reports video that we have available for eCaST training. If you are a longtime eCaST user, you know that dog is from the old eCaST system.
Oh yeah.
We don't want to see him die, and so someone saved the image, and we thought he should be the face of our eCaST YouTube training channel. So we have an eCaST YouTube training channel. It only has 2 videos on it right now, but right now we kind of have limited ability to post things on our WWC website.
Oh yeah,
zero.
Yeah,
I didn't think so. So right now it's that's a really ugly name of a channel up there. You can see in my header it's like U's and blah blahs and stuff like that. So we have been posting links to these in the eConnect. Usually if somebody emails me about how to run X, Y, or Z report, I'll reply back with the link. But we're going to be populating this with a number of different short instructional videos, generally no more than 5 minutes, on how to do different things in eCaST. So it could be common questions that you have. So we're going to make one about final diagnosis date in particular. So if you feel fuzzy about what we talked about today, or you want your other users at your site to learn about it and you don't want them to have to listen to an entire hour of me talking,
why not?
There'll be a link posted here for them to watch a 5-minute video on just final diagnosis date. There'll also be links posted with the videos on individual screening errors. So if you're like, I don't know what the heck this one means, you can go here to look at it. We will at some point actually embed these in eCaST, so when you're on a page you can get to this list too, which is really super cool. And we're also going to replace the live trainings that happen monthly with a playlist of select videos that we want you to watch, or want new users to watch.
Right.
We will then have a list of test data entry that we want you to do in the training site we were just on, outlining or really demonstrating your proficiency in entering, maybe 2 to 3 cases that meet certain criteria. So that will kind of be the new format for making sure that you guys feel comfortable with the system and know how to enter high quality data and then triage your errors before you get access to the system, and for kind of helping to answer questions as you go along. So if you have not already watched these videos, they might be helpful for you. So I went to this main YouTube page. I think CDPHE eCaST is our name. And so here you see eCaST WWC billing reports demo. If any of you on the call happen to be data entry people for the colorectal programs, for example, you might see other ones in the future that say eCaST CCSP or CRCCP, a bunch of acronyms that might sound unfamiliar to some of you and very familiar to others of you, but we're trying to make one central repository for all eCaST videos. Some of them will be generic, so doing a good client search, that's something that doesn't matter what program you're in, the same principles hold. So some of them might not be program specific, but you can also, as we move forward, this should be populated by July 1 with, it's about 20 or so different instructional videos that we thought of to start out with. Cool. And so we will be doing, I think it's next week, we will have one more eCaST Live basics training next Wednesday. But starting in July, we will move to this online format. So all your new users will have access. Existing users will have access at any time to go in here and look around at videos. New users will be driven here to watch at least a certain set of videos.
I thought maybe eCaST Basics was on the 11th as opposed to next week on the 2nd. But, so.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on.
I have a question. This is Dee at Penrose Hospital.
Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Our hospital won't let us connect to YouTube for security reasons.
Yes.
So what do we do about that?
Crazy.
We have heard that before. You're right. So the eCaST Basics training is 6/11.
Okay.
Because Nick is out of town next week at a family planning conference. So we are going to, on the website, the new WWC website, and some of you may have heard about this and some of you may not have, but the state of Colorado or the health department is yet again changing the website that we use to provide information to you guys. So I think that, I don't know, Chris, if you want to give a really brief update, because this is kind of connected to that. We'll post the videos for download there. So if you can't get onto YouTube, they'll be available for download at the provider website for WWC, but the website is moving.
The website is moving, and we are at this point where we cannot change anything on the current WWC website or the CDPHE website. So we need, we will post things in eConnect that come up between now and then, and hopefully by the end of June, this new and very functional website will be will be up and running. But stay tuned, I guess, is the best I can give you.
Okay, thank you.
That wasn't it.
Yeah, and some of you, others of you might find that you go to the website and it doesn't work. I would say, you know, if you have a workaround to be able to. I thought I muted this person.
I think you didn't. Yeah.
I didn't mute myself, did I?
Let me search while you're talking.
Hold on, that one just lit up. Okay. Oh my gosh. Yes. Good luck. So they should be posted on just kind of as a list. The thing that's really cool about YouTube is that it helps us to, like, as you guys use it more and more, the ones that are kind of most helpful should rise to the top, and kind of develop a list that's helpful for you guys in a way that's guided by you guys as it gets more and more use. For those that can't get into YouTube, we will post an entire list of those for download and then viewing. They'll be kind of in an MP4 format. So you can, you know, if you have an iPhone, you can download it to your iPhone and listen or watch it, or do that on your computer. So it's actually a little bit easier format than these CenturyLink things are currently as well. So yeah, I know that that's a limitation to some of your organizations. You should tell them that you're using YouTube for work purposes and that they're hindering you. But I know that that's not always possible to get around. So, so let us know as we. I don't know if there are any other concerns or things that you can think of in terms of an online training format that you'd like to see. Maybe just be thinking about that, because we're making this obviously for you guys. It feels to me like the two that we have released have worked really well. I feel like we've actually internally gotten less questions about how to use it. Are you guys liking the videos that we've posted so far?
Yeah.
Good. Good.
If there is anything you think that we could do better in the format, right now you're seeing our screen and we're moving around, but if there, as a recording, if there's anything else, or the length doesn't feel right, I think we're trying to keep them under 5 minutes, feels pretty good internally, but let us know. And I think depending on the success of these, potentially we could move towards this sort of format with professional development in general with WWC. So please provide feedback, because if you're like, I really hate these videos, you need to tell us now, because we might do it more and more and more to you.
We think you love them.
So do let us know that. There's one other really short thing I wanted to mention, just because people have been having issues with it recently. If you're using Internet Explorer and you can use Chrome, use Google Chrome instead. Give me a call or Nick a call if that's sounding familiar. One telltale sign recently is that people are having difficulty scrolling on their home page of eCaST, and that seems to be happening in Internet Explorer and old versions of Internet Explorer. So if you have been experiencing that and suffering in silence, we think we know the fix. So get in touch with us if you're like all of a sudden not being able to scroll down and see all of your error messages on your home page. That's the telltale sign that you may be using an old version of Internet Explorer.
Like we do at the state.
Yeah, it doesn't work on our Internet Explorer. So I guess at this point we have just a few more minutes left. Are there any other general questions or things you'd like me to quickly run through in eCaST?
No.
Big sad. That's good.
Are you guys liking short-term follow-up now, or are we just liking it internally?
Liking it a lot better.
Yay. That's how it was originally intended. When I tell you, like, this is not how it's supposed to work, but it'll be better one day, hopefully that gave you, like, some trust or faith in me that one day it really will be better.
She was right.
We now believe you.
Now believe you.
Awesome.
Good.
Well, and we are continuing to work. I think right now we are working on getting your old reports, 84 and 85, that case manager report, available to you in eCaST under reports. It's not there yet, but hopefully within the next couple of weeks that should be available to you.
Nice.
So I think that is the latest thing that we are working on, is some things that we were kind of hoping would be features of the dashboard, just getting you them in report format now so that you can use them, and Angie doesn't have to just, review it and then give you phone calls all the time. She'll still do that, I'm sure, but I think that's what we're working on right now.
Nice.
Any other quick questions before I do roll call again?
Nope.
Any other topics that are, like longer probably than 2 minutes, but you would kind of love for us to go through on a future eCaST users group? Like, this is kind of a mess. Maybe be thinking about that too, because we generally pick topics based on what seems to be common questions.
Yeah.
So maybe there are other things that we don't realize if you don't mention them to us. So I'm going to go back ahead. Those who I've already got, you already told me you were present. Feel free to jump off the call now. Thank you so much for attending. Those who I didn't get your name at the beginning, I'm going to go through one more time. If I thank you, agency, it means I got you already. I'm sorry, was there a question?
Someone.
No, you say thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome.
All righty. Boulder Valley, Clinica Colorado, Clinica Family Health Services.
This is Evie with Clinica Family Health.
Great, thank you. Clinica Tepeyac, Community Health Clinic in Dolores County, Community Health Services in Pitkin County, Delta County, Denver Indian, Dream Centers, Exempla St. Joe's, Gunnison County.
Jill from Gunnison.
Great, thanks. Lake City Area Medical Center, Mountain Family, Northwest Colorado VNA.
Here, Evelyn Bacon.
Great, thank you. Parkview Medical Center. Peak Vista, I think I heard Oceana.
You did, yes.
You did.
All right, thanks. Prowers Medical Group. Again, if I'm skipping you, it means I gotcha. Salud Family Health Centers. San Juan Basin. San Luis Valley.
Rebecca Daniels here.
Great, thanks. Southern Colorado Family Medicine. Spanish Peaks. St. Mary's. Summit Community Care Clinic. Uncompahgre. Weld County. And Yuma District Hospital. All righty. Were there any other quick questions before we get off the phone? All righty. Thank you so much, guys, for attending, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, bye.
You get the button.
You're going to stop recording.
Did you see that? How many times I had to try? Clicking.
Hi, this is Susan from Prowers.